Hey guys, what is going on today? Bojo here, back in NHL 18, where it is finally time for some playoff hockey, and today we are going to see who NHL 18 thinks is going to win this year's Stanley Cup. So make sure you guys go down to that like button down below and hit it if you are excited to have some playoff hockey in your lives for the next couple of weeks and months. It's going to be very, very exciting nonetheless, but as you guys can see right here, I have set up every team that is in the Stanley Cup playoffs for this year, and we're going to do a sim in NHL 18. So starting in the West, we have the Nashville Predators against the Colorado Avalanche, the Winnipeg Jets against the Minnesota Wild, the Las Vegas Golden Knights against the LA Kings, and the Anaheim Ducks against the San Jose Sharks. As we move over to the East, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning against the New Jersey Devils, Boston Bruins against the Toronto Maple Leafs, Washington Capitals against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Battle of Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh Penguins against my Philadelphia Flyers. So in order to make this sim as accurate as I possibly could, I actually went and edited up the lines for each of the 16 teams in the playoffs. So to give you guys a little preview of that, let's go check out the lines and see what changes I have made. Okay guys, so when I was editing up the lines for all 16 of these NHL teams, I was using a bunch of different tools in order to get my information correct. I was using information from ESPN off of my fantasy league. I was using Daily Faceoff to take a look at the lineups for each of the NHL teams. So I think I came up with a pretty good lineup for each NHL team that is going into these playoffs. So this is what the Ducks forward line is going to look like. Derek Grant is going to be that fourth line center in place of Antoine Vermette, I do believe. They are going to be, unfortunately, without Cam Fowler, I believe, as well to start their playoff run. I don't think he'll be coming back to start the playoffs. He might be coming back a little bit later. So they're going to be running with Marcus Peterson and Andy Welenski on their defensive core. Obviously, the scratch players are going to be Cam Fowler, Chris Kelly for Mets. Bieksa is out on injured reserve. Patrick Eaves is out with that injury, with that illness, so he won't be coming back. And I had Corbin and Holtzer scratched as well. So that is the lineup there for the Anaheim Ducks on defensive forward. Obviously, no changes in goaltending with John Gibson going to be their starter. Okay, next up we move over to the Boston Bruins, and honestly, their lineup is not going to change all too much. Rick Nash does believe, both Nashes actually, Rick Nash and Riley Nash are both expected to be Game 1 ready starters, so I didn't move them from their lineups. Honestly, Boston has a lot of good players right now that are scratched, and it's just like their team layout right now is just really good. Sean Curley, I think, also is expected to be back as well. We opted to throw Charlie McAvoy back into the lineup because this most recent roster update had him scratched, so he's back in there. Grizzlick's on there on the fourth, and their whole defensive core looks to be ready and ready to go. Kevin Miller is back from injury as well. Scratch players are Bjork, he's not coming back. Like I said, there's just way too many good players on Boston in the game right now that we have playing from their lineup. Backus, Brandon Carlo was going to be out, unfortunately. Nick Holden, I think, is a scratch defenseman. Gianta, I just don't have room for him, and Kari is not going to be playing as well. Tuukka Rask, obviously, is going to be their starting goaltender. Okay, next up we move to the Colorado Avalanche. I really didn't have to change all too much, just moving players up and down the lineup. The big name that unfortunately the Avalanche are going to be missing is Erik Johnson on their defensive core and Semyon Varlamov in their net. So that's going to hurt them a little bit. If we look at their defensive starting lineup now, I believe Barberio and Mark Alt are going to be in for Erik Johnson now. I think Barberio is going to be filling in for him. Nemeth, Girard, Barry, and Zadorov are going to be there on defense. And then obviously without Semyon Varlamov on their team, Jonathan Bernier is going to handle the workload in net for the Avs. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough matchup for them going up against the Nashville Predators. Alright, so I looked it up on both ESPN and Daily Faceoff, and it doesn't look like they have Ryan Murray listed on an injury, nor did they have him in the lineup the last game. Obviously, he was playing all the other previous games, so I'm not sure what they're doing with Ryan Murray. He might just be a healthy scratch. Columbus Blue Jackets fans can let me know down below, but right now I'm going to leave him off the lineup. Everybody else, I think, is slated to go on their team, and then, no surprise, he's going to be on the case for the Blue Jackets. Alright, so we move on to the LA Kings next. Only a couple lineup changes, changing up the lines a little bit. One change is obviously Amadio is going to be in there on the fourth line center due to the fact that Alex Iafallo is not going to be starting for them when the playoffs do begin. Same thing with Derek Forbort and Torrey Mitchell are going to be out as well. I do believe Paul Ledoux is a healthy scratch, so he should be in the lineup. if they don't have any changes. Muzzin, I think it was out with injury at the end of the year, but I think he is slated to come back. Everybody else on this team should be in there. They do have somebody who I believe is in their AHL lineup who should be playing on this. I think it's Fantenberg, I believe, should be in this lineup, but I believe they might be able to interchange Fantenberg and Gravel back and forth. So for right now, I threw Gravel in there, but I do believe Fantenberg has a chance to be slotted back and forth between their lineups, and Jonathan Quick will obviously be in the net. All right, next up is the Minnesota Wild. Obviously, we have that first line set up with Tyler Ennis there. Everything else looks pretty good on the Wild side, with the exception of a couple defensemen. Ryan Suter is a huge hit to their defensive core without any question. So Ryan Suter is definitely going to be missed on that back end for sure, but hopefully Brodin and Dummel will have to step it up. But Murphy, Spurgeon, Prosser, and Olofsson should all be ready to go for game number 1. Dubnyk will be in the net, and that's what the Minnesota Wild look like. All right, so now we move on to the New Jersey Devils, and I believe the only forward change that I made was that I threw Marcus Johansson into their lineup. I think he should be ready to go for game number 1. He's been out, obviously, with that injury for a long time, but I think he is going to be ready to come back, so that's the only change we made on offense, to throw Marcus Johansson in. Defensively, there's not really any changes on defense. Their defense is what it is. It's going to look like that. But in goaltending, Keith Kincaid is going to be their game 1 starter. I would believe so. I think it's his job to lose right now. If obviously any changes occur, Corey Schneider will 100% be thrown in there if Tampa seems to be a little bit too much for Jersey, but Keith Kincaid should be the guy starting right now, and everybody else should be scratched. I think Drew Stafford will take a backseat to Marcus Johansson if he is out. If he's not, expect either him or Brian Gibbons to be inserted into their lineup. All right, next up, we move to my boys, the Philadelphia Flyers. I edited up their first line, so that Raffle is on the first line. Konechny's down there on the third. We took off Jordan Wheel, so that Lawton, Laterra, and Matt Reed are into their lineup. Obviously, Simmons back down to the third. Defensively, we took Hag off, put Sanheim in, and obviously we made the change to send Lyon back down. Mrazek's the backup. Brian Elliott is back in the cage once again. Should be the game 1 starter. All right, next up we move to Pittsburgh, and I believe the only change I made was to put Josh Joris into the lineup, since we don't know if Derek Brassard might be ready for game 1 or not. Kuhnhackl moves back into the lineup as well. Carter Rowney, Hunwick, Brassard, and Simone are their only scratched players. Defensively, it looks pretty much the same for defensemen on Pittsburgh. Obviously, Letang's in there, Mata, Schultz, Ruedel, and Alexiak are in. Matt Murray will be the starter with DeSmith backing him up. Next up is San Jose, and I believe the only change that I made was I put Joel Ward back into the lineup, and still Joe Thornton will not be into the lineup. They're saying he's not going to be ready for game 1. He might not be ready for game 2 either. Who knows if he might even draw into this lineup at all for the playoffs. So San Jose missing Joe Thornton's going to be a little bit of a hurt. Eric Ferrer, I think, is a healthy scratch. Same thing with like Joachim Ryan, Yannick Hansen. Thornton, obviously, missing him's going to hurt. Sorensen and Tim Heat are obviously all healthy scratches for that team as well. Defensively, it's going to look like this. Paul Martin's back into their lineup, and Martin Jones should be the starter. All right, next up we move to Tampa. Really didn't have to change much of anything with this team. Only change I had to make was take out Adam Ernie, and I believe either Cedric Paquette or Corey Conacher should be going into the Tampa Bay's offense, so we're going to opt to go with Cedric Paquette. For this time, defensively, it looks pretty much the same. Coburn's in. I took off, who did I take off? Dachin, so their lineup for defense is the way it is going to be set. Vasilevsky, the starter. Next up is Toronto, and honestly, I didn't have to touch a dang thing with the Maple Leafs. Their offense, defense, and goaltending is exactly the way it is set up in real life and in the game. No changes need to be made with Toronto. Their defense is what it is. Anderson's their starter. Offense is going to hopefully look like that. Toronto should be good to go. Alright, so next up is the Vegas Golden Knights making their very first playoff appearance. I have put Riley Smith back into their lineup as well, since he did play in the last game, so hopefully that little game will get him warmed up for the playoffs. David Perron is also a question mark. We don't know if he's going to be ready for the playoffs as well, but I left him in for the time being. They got a lot of really good players who are scratched right now, like William Carrier, Cody Eakin, I think is their extra forward. Spiza we know for 100% is out, but Nosek, is also a guy who they could throw into their lineup on offense. Defensively, like I said, Spies is the only guy out. So their defensive core is set up the way it is. McNabb, Schmidt, Theodore Englund, Merrill, and Colin Miller. Marc-Andre Fleury will be the starter for sure. Alright, so next up we move to the Caps. In the past roster update, I had to put Kuznetsov back into the team. Same thing with TJ Oshie, so they're both back. Everything else is good. Beagle, I think, is going to be back for the playoffs as well, so we threw him down there onto the fourth line. Defensively, nothing really changed defensively. I don't really think I had to make any changes to their defensive core. Goaltenders, Holtby is going to be on a very kind of short leash, I would think, as well, for the goaltender situations here for the playoffs. I think if Holtby might struggle a little bit, Grubauer played very well in the back end of the season, so if he struggles, Grubauer might be able to go in there, but we'll talk about that more with my real-life playoff predictions. Scratch players, Boyd, Chiasson, and Jarabek are the guys who are scratched for Washington. Alright, so now we move on to our final team here, the Winnipeg Jets. I think their forward lineup is going to be the way it is set right now, if I had to predict. Defensively is a little bit of question marks because as for scratch defensemen, we know that Dmitry Kulikov is definitely out. He's not coming back, and same thing with Matt Hendricks. Both of those two guys are definitely not going to be making their way back into the lineup. As for the defense goes, we know that Toby Enstrom, I believe, might be making an appearance for the playoffs. We knew Trouba was out as well, but I think he should be coming back. Same thing with like Morrissey. A bunch of the Winnipeg's defense was hurt, you know, coming into this series, but I think the way this lineup is right now, I think that's what they're going to be running with. A couple of them should be back for injury. Hellebuck's going to be their starter, and I think the Jets defense should be good to go. Alright guys, now that I went over all the lineups, like I said, I tried to make it as close as I possibly could because I know for a fact EA probably won't be putting out a playoff roster update until, you know, a couple rounds deep into the playoffs, but that's as close as I could possibly get it to the real life NHL lineups and rosters. So that's what we're going to run with here in this simulation, and let's get the show on the road, shall we? These are the matchups, as you guys can clearly see, and let's see who's going to be moving out of round number 1. So I will do the simulations first, and I'll see you guys after round number 1 is complete. Alright guys, so here we are at our final matchup here of the very first round, just to take a look at the results that have happened so far. Nashville ended up beating Colorado in 7. The Jets took out the Wild in 6. The LA Kings swept Vegas, so Vegas's first playoff appearance did not last all too long. Anaheim beat San Jose in 6. Tampa Bay went the distance with Jersey, but they came out on top in 7. Toronto also went the distance with Boston, and they went out in 7. The Blue Jackets beat the Caps in 5, so Capitals fans are definitely not going to be happy about that. And then we have our last matchup here. Philly and Pittsburgh go into 7 as well. Come on, Flyers, get the W here in game number 7. And they end up beating the Pittsburgh Penguins in game 7. So, our round 2 matchups are as such. The Winnipeg Jets and the Nashville Predators. That series will be nice. LA versus Anaheim. Toronto versus Tampa Bay. And Columbus versus the Philadelphia Flyers. Alright, so that's what round 2 looks like. Let's get through this and see who's moving on to our conference finals. Alright guys, so we're moving to our last 2 matchups here in round number 2, and we have 2 more game 7s coming at you guys. But so far, Nashville took care of the Winnipeg Jets in 6, and Tampa Bay took care of Toronto in 5 games. So we have our first 2 competitors for the conference finals, one in the East and one in the West. Now we have LA versus Anaheim going to 7, and then Columbus versus Philly going to 7 as well. So here we go. Sim this one, who's moving on. The LA Kings come out on top over the Anaheim Ducks in 7, and then Columbus and Philadelphia. We have the Columbus Blue Jackets being the Philadelphia Flyers in a game 7. So our conference final matchups are set. In the West, you have the Los Angeles Kings against the Nashville Predators, and in the East, you have the Columbus Blue Jackets up against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So if I would have to guess, I would say Nashville-Tampa final. That would be my guess. So let's see what happens. Alright, so unfortunately, the President's Trophy Nashville Predators got ousted in the conference finals to the LA Kings, who will be making their return to the Stanley Cup. And right now we have Columbus with a 3-2 lead right now over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Let's see if they're going to be able to force a game number 7. And it doesn't. Oh, yes, they are. Oh, I thought that sim was going to be longer, but Tampa Bay Lightning do come back and force a game number 7 against the Blue Jackets. And our Stanley Cup final matchup is going to be the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Los Angeles Kings. A very, very interesting matchup, to say the least. 12-5 right now, 12-7 for the Lightning. And honestly, this potentially could be a matchup. You never know with the Kings in the playoffs. That's 100% without a doubt. So I honestly think I could see Tampa Bay making it all the way. But let's see what happens here. Tampa Bay versus the Los Angeles Kings is what EA thinks. Tampa Bay wins game number 1, and they win game number 2, and they win game number 3, and LA comes back and wins game number 4, up, and game number 5, and game number 6. Could we see a reverse sweep coming? We gotta do a in-game simulation here for this last game, boys, without any question of the doubt. Definitely got to do an in-game simulation here. And oh, LA starts it off. Jeff Carter with a goal on Andrei Vasilevskiy. First period is 1-1 tie. Jeff Carter scores on Vasilevskiy, but Steven Stamkos halfway through the first scores on Jonathan Quick. Second period, 3-1. 2 goals from Anze Kopitar there in the second period. Will that be enough? Can Tampa Bay come back here in the third period, make it a game? No, it is not. Drew Doughty gets 1 more in the third, and the Los Angeles Kings upset the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I believe LA Kings were the, first wildcard team, right? Yeah, they were the first wildcard team. And they are going to be your Stanley Cup champions, as predicted by EA Sports NHL. Wow. Right now, for points, the entire league, Nikita Kucherov with 28 points. Anze Kopitar with 23, Drew Doughty with 22, 20 assists for him. My God, what a monster. Tanner Pearson with 20. Carter and Stamkos both had 19. Sean Couturier only played 14 games, but he had 16 points. What a game. What a series there for Sean Couturier, only playing that little bit of games, but a lot of points for him. Lauren Toffoli both had 16. Miller, Getzlaf had 15 points in 13 games. Seth Jones, 14 points in 19 games. Claude Giroux, 13 and 14. Voracek 13 and 14. A lot of guys with 13 points as well. Goaltender stats, let's take a look at hopefully Jonathan Quick and Andrei Vasilevskiy. Yeah, Jonathan Quick 16, 6 and 2, .936. Vasilevskiy 0.929. Goals against average 1.96, 2.09. Yeah, those guys were definitely studs for sure. But yeah, that's how the playoff tree ended up going, guys. The LA Kings, first wildcard team, upset the Vegas Golden Knights. They completely swept them out. Beats the Anaheim Ducks in 7. Beats the Predators in 6. Beats the Tampa Bay Lightning in 7 to win their Stanley Cup again. So with the lineup changes that I have made, EA Sports NHL predicts that the LA Kings will come out on top here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Do I agree with it? I don't know. You guys will have to go and check out my personal Stanley Cup predictions video in a couple days when I end up recording that, and see who I actually end up predicting will win this year's Stanley Cup. But with the lineup changes, like I said, that I have made, and all the roster rearrangements, that's what EA Sports predicts. LA and Tampa in the finals, with LA coming out on top and reverse sweeping the Tampa Bay Lightning up 3-0, and they blow it. So thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, make sure you guys hit that like button. Once again, if you're excited for some playoff hockey, make sure to go check out my personal playoff predictions video in a couple days. Obviously, stay tuned to the channel when that comes out. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.